Hi everyone, welcome to another Academic Success webinar series. My name is Ashley Gray. I'm the Disability and Learning Skills Advisor for the School of Continuing Studies. I have with me my colleague Amy Blatt. She is the Learning Skills Specialist for Maine campus. If you need to get in contact with us, our emails are, you can reach Annie at arc@georgetown.edu, and you can reach myself at arc-ses@georgetown.edu. Today we're going to be talking about challenging perfectionism and building resiliency. I think especially topical as we are right in the midst of midterm season. So hopefully we'll provide you all with some good tips and strategies to kind of make that final push before spring break. All right. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Make sure you stay connected with us for resources, for like tutoring hours for our main campus, the ARC newsletter, or other campus resources. If you follow us on Facebook, ARC Georgetown, or on Instagram at ARC_Georgetown, we'll post reminders of our upcoming webinars. And then, of course, you check out our website, which is academicsupport.georgetown.edu. There you can find a lot of good downloadable academic resources, and there you can also find all of our archive academic success webinar series that we've done in the past 4 semesters. And then here's a look at the upcoming webinar series schedule. We are about halfway through. We will be taking a break and coming back on Thursday, March 14th at 1 p.m. Same link as you logged in to join us today. And we will be talking about critical thinking. And then we're going to round out the semester with a career focus webinar on March 27th. And then talking about study groups on April 16th, and finally our favorite final exams webinar on Wednesday, April 24th, right before we get to the final exam time. So as always, again, if you want to check out archived webinars, you can do so on our website. And we'll go ahead and get started.
All right, so now we're just going to dive right in and look at a definition of perfectionism. So we're just going to set the stage for what perfectionism actually is. In the Google definition, you can see below, it says the refusal to accept any standard short of perfection. And a few examples that Ashley and I determined include maintaining a perfect social life, striving for those perfect grades, and feeling like you have to be and stay busy. And what we mean by this is maybe putting yourself in an overcommitted state. So trying to do all the extracurricular activities while taking, an 18 credit course load, but also participating in an internship. And so it's really just you're in a state of overcommitted, and that's where that perfectionism comes into play. So we're going to really break this down to think about what goes into perfectionism and how we can really build resiliency. So flip the script and change it to a positive. Okay. So thinking about perfectionism, it's a multifaceted, it encompasses a wide range of behaviors and attitudes. Individuals can observe this complexity in themselves and in those around them. So some individuals are really relentless in the hard driving pursuit of excellence, while some are more laid back. But again, those ones that are perfectionists might be a bit more set on the major failures or the setbacks that they experience. So again, we want to try and flip the script. How can we make these more of a positive moving forward? So thinking about how we can increase self-esteem, lower the incidence of anxiety, depression, and get out of this state of trying to maintain perfectionism, and again build that resiliency and grit.
All right, to build off Annie's definition of perfectionism, we really want to talk about how this idea of perfectionism sets really unreasonable expectations. So it's a goal that no person, no student can really achieve or sustain. It's just unreasonable to ask of yourself or anyone else to be perfect day in, day out, especially when it comes to balancing all the different aspects that you have as a student. And when you are really trying to look at your academics through a quote unquote perfectionist lens, you're kind of setting yourself up for a lack of success. Because again, it's unreasonable goals, it's not sustainable, and eventually you're going to get to the point where you're going to burn out. So this can all lead to a couple of things. And these are things that are, I think, very common, and we see a lot and work through a lot with our students in our office. So they can lead to anxiety, shame around not doing well enough, or maybe not getting as good a grade as your peers, or not being as busy as maybe some of your roommates. It can lead to stress, and I think that's a huge one we see across all of our campuses. You ask students how they're doing, and they say stress. And a lot of this comes from trying to do everything through this perfectionism lens. And then another thing that it can lead to that I think sometimes we forget about, but is equally as important, is procrastination. So when you're so focused on having the perfect paper or getting the perfect grade in the exam, or being quote unquote the perfect student, which we all know is unrealistic and there is no perfect student. Sometimes a lot of you are almost afraid to start something, or you'll start and stop things many times because it's not living up to this unrealistic expectation that you have in your mind. So procrastination is a big one that I think it's important for you guys to look through and see how you're procrastinating in your daily lives, and whether or not that is a cause from kind of unrealistic goals and expectations.
Okay, so now we're going to look into how to actually reframe perfectionism. So the first one we want to talk through is how to look at academic setbacks as actual learning opportunities. So instead, how can we focus on what's been accomplished rather than obsessing over the failure? So maybe a test didn't necessarily go the way that you had intended. So instead of obsessing over the grade that you might have got, or the amount of hours that you thought you needed to put in, look at the information that you did retain. Look at the problems that you were able to answer, and think through, how can I change my lens of thinking to say, this was a learning opportunity, and for next time I can do A, B, and C to improve upon whatever the goal is. And we're going to talk about, goal setting, how that is important too. So thinking about how can you look at academic setbacks as a learning opportunity to improve upon for the future. Again, focus on what's been accomplished. Again, we can't necessarily go back and change grades. We can't go back and change performance, but what you can do is change the way or refine the way that you move forward. So maybe you set a goal to put in 1 to 2 more hours of studying per week, but that studying is really specific, it's realistic, there is a goal for that time. It's very directed, instead of what Ashley was kind of referring to about procrastination, just saying, I'm going to throw 10 more hours of studying during the week, but there is no plan in place, and hence that's when the procrastination sets in. So thinking of how we can develop a solution-focused mindset. So looking at, again, not the problem, but thinking about what steps can you put in place, what resources can you utilize on campus to ensure that you are making strides forward, rather than focusing on and obsessing over the failures.
Great. So when we're talking about building resiliency through academic strategies, we're talking about what Annie just mentioned, which is how are we being solution focused? And a lot of that can be done through the way you're setting up your study time, the way you're setting up, we talk a lot about academic strategies, but where are your study skills at? How are you implementing these academic strategies in and outside the classroom? So wanted to highlight 4 of them for us today. The first one is our favorite one that we talk about often, which is time management. So like Annie said, it's not just throwing 10 more hours into studying for a class per week. It's how are we studying smarter and harder. So how are we studying in increments? Are we being very focused and as we're studying? Are we using critical thinking questions to use as a lens through as we're reading through chapters? And are we really plugging in those study times and being very specific about those study times in our calendar, right? We're not just going to say we're going to study, Wednesday afternoon from 1 to 4. We're being very specific about what we're going to be working on. What are those goals that we're trying to achieve during that study time? And how are we making sure we're incorporating time for rest and for breaks, right? So if you are a person who's notorious for skipping sleep to study, I would recommend not to do that. But how are you making sure you're getting your rest and relaxation in, right? How are you making sure you're giving your brain a break? Those are all very important things because that does help build the resiliency. That helps you able to keep on going, to keep on studying by giving yourself breaks and making sure you're taking care of yourself. So looking at that time management piece. And then next, looking at goal setting. And we talk a lot about SMART goals. And SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So when you're setting goals for the semester, you're setting goals for a study session or for a class, you want to be really specific about what you want to achieve, right? Because the more specific you are, the more achievable it's probably going to be able to be, right? You're not saying, I'm going to be a perfect student. You're saying, I want to do the best I can in this class. Measurable. How are you measuring things, right? How are you providing yourself a way to evaluate your goals? And that's really important to check in on those measures as you're working towards your goals. And then achievable, right? We look at what is reasonable. What is reasonable for being a student and having a lot of different responsibilities and commitments. And then relevant. Are they relevant to your long-term goals here at Georgetown? Are they relevant to your long-term goals for your career? But also, are they relevant to what you were trying to accomplish within this semester? And then time-bound, being really specific, again, about how much time we're putting into things and making sure it's very directed time. So to use that example again, not to be throwing 10 hours into a week just to study if you feel that you're not keeping up with the rest of the class. But how are you studying? What are you studying? And how are you getting that feedback along the way? Are you checking in with your faculty, your TAs, other individuals in the class to say, you know what, this is really relevant and I'm very focused on it, but it's not all consuming. And again, studying smarter, not harder. So looking at study strategies. And this can be a lot about note taking. So how are you taking notes? We talk a lot about how are you interacting with your notes outside the classroom. Notes don't stay stagnant. They don't magically only appear in class. They should be something that you should be reviewing. And this doesn't have to be 3 hours every night. This can be, I think, the most beneficial kind of strategy for looking at notes and staying current and up to date on the material is spending an extra 10 to 15 minutes before or after class looking at your notes. Make that a habit. And those 10 and 15 minutes add up and they don't feel so overwhelming. So you're less likely to procrastinate and that information stays fresh in your mind. How are you breaking down larger assignments? How are you breaking down big pieces of paper? How are you building out study schedules, right? I think for a lot of individuals, a lot of students we work with who feel kind of these perfectionist tendencies, they're not really building out study schedules. They're not being very timely with how they're spreading out the work so it doesn't feel so overwhelming, right? And that's one of the things that we hear a lot about when we talk about perfectionism is that it feels very overwhelming. The workload feels very overwhelming. So how do you break that down into smaller chunks? Give yourself, again, that rest and that break, but really be very specific about what you're doing.
Ashley, could you actually talk to us more about the importance of sleep? Because I know you're really, you've done a lot of research on this, and the importance of sleep in retaining information, right? It is a big deal.
Yeah, so sleep is a really big deal. So why, when we talk about not cramming, one, it's just not a good academic strategy, but the reason it's not a really good academic strategy is because when you go to sleep, your brain actually converts that information from short-term memory that you learned today to long-term memory. And so that's a really vital piece of when you're studying for exams, or especially during finals, or like now during midterm, you really need to make sure you're giving yourself enough sleep, 8 to 9 hours, or whatever works best for you. But you need to give your brain a break to really convert that information from short-term to long-term memory. And also your body, your senses, right? Like your awareness, your ability to kind of process when you're tired. One of the things that I learned, I think, from actually our wonderful counseling psychologist is that you can't replace sleep, right? It's not something that you can catch up on. When you lose sleep, you lose sleep. And that does have long-term effects. So it's really, really important every day that you're taking the time to put in that self-care, but make sure you're getting that sleep. It's just really important for your long-term health, but also for your long-term academic success.
Yeah, and I think that's really important when it comes to building resiliency, because like you mentioned, there probably is a possibility of burnout if we put such immense pressure on ourselves to get the best grades and to do all of the things in a 1 or 2 week span or in a semester. So really thinking of the longevity of your career here at Georgetown and maintaining those resiliency skills through what Ashley mentioned is just the most important thing.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point, Annie, because classes get harder as we kind of go through our career from our first year to a third year to a fourth year. And so those skills are a vital aspect of really being able to maintain your long-term success and making sure you're setting yourself up for really healthy habits as you move into either graduate schools or law schools or a career. So I think that's a really great point. And then the last one, again, is just that active studying piece, right? So how are you engaging with the material? And one of the things that Amy and I really like to talk about is studying doesn't just have to be done at your desk by yourself, just rereading things, right? If you're in a foreign language class, can you set up a lunch with some of your peers in the class to speak in only Spanish or only French? So that way you're utilizing those skills, right? When we talk about active studying, is how are you utilizing those skills? Can you explain concepts from your psychology or chemistry class back to a roommate or a friend, right? Are you able to take these big ideas and put them into a summary and explain it back? Are you able to use your own words in your summarizing point? Are you interacting with your materials through mind maps or outline? And again, how are you interacting with your notes throughout the week? So really building in small increments of active studying time have that really long-term effect for your implementing strategies, good academic strategies in the long term, and building resiliency through that. All right, to continue on, when you're building upon your own personal and strengths and skills by reflecting on your past success, this is part of building resiliency, right? So I like to talk a lot about resiliency. It's not just something you come to. You come to it by, maybe not doing so great the first time and learning more about it. So how are you being really solution focused? And so some questions to ask yourself as you're building your academic resiliency is, when in the past have you been successful, right? So we talk about perfectionism a lot. Instead of focusing on, like we said, Annie said we want to flip the script, and instead of focusing on what I didn't do right, when in the past have you been successful? When have you done really well? Or when have you been really proud of yourself? And you can do this by, let's work for other places where you've been successful, right? Maybe you're really engaged with the material because you set up a really great study schedule and you started working on papers earlier, or you had a study, so when the material got really, really tough and hard, feel so overwhelming because you knew there were other people going through that. And then again, reflecting on what you what have you felt most accomplished. That's really important. Not just to kind of take a step back and look at, say, like, well, maybe these are some areas that I can improve upon, or maybe you want to make some tweaks there, but really taking a step back when you've done a good job, you've done your best, and saying, this is when I felt most accomplished. How do you replicate that moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's really important to really hit home on celebrating the small successes, right? Not thinking about the failures or all of that. Really look at the progress that you took, the steps that you took, and think about how can I celebrate the small successes? Because eventually they're going to build and build and build, and then it's going to be a big success. All right, so actually we've listed a bunch of good tangible strategies to think about how you can become more resilient. We've talked through some of these, so I'm going to name a few and then Ashley might chime in. We've already talked about self-care, so ensuring that you are getting that consistent sleep on a weekly basis, ensuring that you are taking time for yourself. Maybe working out is something that you want to build into your schedule, or doing some yoga classes, or listening to a meditation app, just to continue to help yourself regain kind of focus and maintain, again, this longevity career that you have here at Georgetown. Building a support network. So we talk about creating study groups when you aren't trying to study for an exam or engaging with the material. Building a support network goes hand in hand with the personal side as well. So ensuring that you have friends, maybe it's guardians, maybe it's a faculty on campus that you can confide in and talk to, and really feel like you're being heard, and you can bounce ideas off of one another to say, this is something that I really want to improve upon, and this is what I'm planning on doing. These are the steps I'm taking. So really building that support network around you is going to be really helpful.
The one I really love is examining your thoughts. So the way someone described this to me once is like your thoughts are like fish in a fish tank. You don't necessarily have to engage with every thought. You can just observe it kind of swim by. And I think that for me was really meaningful and powerful in knowing that every time I'm feeling frustrated, I can acknowledge that I'm feeling frustrated, but I don't have to engage in the emotion. And so that's kind of a really nifty little strategy to look at. How are you examining your thoughts? How are you not engaging every time you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, and saying, like, I see it, but I don't have to fully take on that feeling. And that it's not something that, you become an expert in overnight. It takes practice. But just kind of becoming more aware, I think, is the key piece. The more aware you are, the more you start paying attention. I think that builds up the resiliency piece of it as well. And to go along with that, just setting realistic goals, like we talked about, really helping kind of reframe in your mind what your goals are and making sure they're attainable within what you have and what you can do day in and day out, right? So many of our students have such packed schedules and packed lives, and it's amazing what you can accomplish during the day, but there are still limits on the day. We're still encouraging you to try to get those 8 to 9 hours of sleep every night.
Yeah, the one I really like too, which goes along with what you were just saying, is changing the internal dialogue that we have. So allowing ourselves to not talk badly about ourselves, and to not put yourself down if something didn't go the way that you were anticipating. Instead, change the internal dialogue to say that you did work really hard into studying for that psychology exam, and you've named or listed a few things that you want to do differently or maybe refine for the next time. So trying to change it to a positive, to say, what, again, that solution focused, how can I improve on for the future? How can I look at what I've done, be proud of it, and then move forward in a positive way?
And I think a great way to do that, Annie, is to sometimes treat yourself like you would talk to a friend. If you had a friend who came to you and said, I did really bad on an exam and I'm just really overwhelmed, you're not going to tell them, well, you need to try harder next time. You're going to be a good friend and you're going to say, I think you did your best. What are solution-focused steps that you can take? Can you go talk to your professor? How can I help support you? And so I think when you kind of treat yourself like you were talking to a friend, it does help kind of change that internal dialogue a little bit. All right, so, and then the last one I think is just really important to home on, don't compare yourself to others. Everyone is very unique. Everyone brings different life experiences, different perspectives to the classroom. And that's really important and really powerful. And so making sure that you're, you know, not constantly saying, well, I think my classmates are doing this, because sometimes your perspective and your resourcefulness and way of looking at things is really what is needed in the classroom. Try to be kind to yourself as you move forward through this last week of midterms, heading into spring break, and then when we come back as we head into finals. All right, well, thanks so much for joining us. We hope everyone can join us on March 14th to talk about critical thinking. As always, we would love your feedback. So if you have suggestions for upcoming webinars or feedback from this one, you can go take our feedback survey at https://tinyurl.com/ARC webinar feedback. And we wish you all luck. And hopefully everyone has a wonderful spring break. Thanks.